question, Darien Fenton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Labour. Does she stand by her statements that concerns raised about the government's proposed changes to sick leave policy are, quote, ridiculous and laughable, unquote?
Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Mr Speaker, absolutely. I believe the specific comments I referred to as ridiculous and laughable came from the CTU, who said healthcare costs would escalate, and the Green Party, who said everyone was going to get pulled out of bed when they're sick. Those statements are ridiculous and laughable.
Darien Fenton.
To the Minister, has she told her Cabinet colleague Peter Dunn that his concerns that this policy is unworkable are ridiculous and laughable?
The Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Mr Speaker, we do not intend creating legislation that is unworkable, and actually the discussion that's going on at the moment is very, very helpful. But perhaps I can assist the member, because not all of the comments have been critical, and today's press editorial said and describes the proposal as, quote, eminently sensible and worthwhile, unquote. And then it goes on to say, Mr Speaker, the measure is clearly aimed at those employees known at practically every workplace who consistently take days off, allegedly for sickness, but in fact for what is strongly suspected to be no genuine reason. For some, these days of sickness often happen to fall on Fridays or Mondays. Mr Speaker, this is really just being practical and clarifying the law.
Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Why is she changing the law to account for what she's just said, people who persistently take off a Monday or a Friday, when the present law already enables employers to require a medical certificate for a one-day absence if the employer has, quote, reasonable grounds to suspect that the sick leave being taken by the employee is not genuine, end quote. Surely that applies to people who persistently take off Mondays and Fridays.
The Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Mr Speaker, this is a small suggested change which merely simplifies the current law. It might not get used much at all, but is there if required by the employer.
Darien Fenton.
To the Minister, does she stand by her statement that, quote, ultimately the employer must make arrangements to pay for the doctor's visits? No one is going to go to those lengths for the sake of it, unquote. If so, what is the point of this unworkable policy?
The Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Mr Speaker, yes, I do stand by those comments. And the point of the policy is to give it an extra tool in the toolkit of employers in cases where they suspect or an employee is taking off a sickie. Whether it's used or not will remain to be seen, and actually whether it's workable or not, I'm sure will be subject to careful select committee scrutiny.
Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. How does requiring employees to drag themselves off to a doctor for a one-day migraine or stomach bug improve the health outcomes for those particular workers?
The Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
Mr Speaker, the proposal does not mention that at all and does not actually require that.
Darien Fenton.
Supplementary to the Minister. Given that the Minister has already confirmed today that employers are already able to require proof of sickness or injury within 3 days if they have reasonable grounds to suspect the sick leave is not genuine, is the change this government is proposing to allow employers to require proof on unreasonable grounds?
The Honourable Kate Wilkinson.
No, Mr Speaker, we do not insist on unreasonable grounds for anything. Employment law should be based on what is reasonable and what is fair to both the employer and the employee.
Question number 11, Colin King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question